Hi, welcome to the Wellness Tea Podcast, where we discuss the health and wellness of Black women and women of color. I'm your host, Amber Majestic, and I'm an integrative nutrition health coach. And I would like to welcome our guest, my lovely friend, Klia.
Hey.
Hi. And I've outed this out. Is there anything that you want to promote, or you're just like...
No, like I have a lot of like random projects that I work on at any given time because I can't keep my focus on one. But nothing right now. I mean, I do still have my podcast out there on platforms, which has a few episodes called How We Love. So if anybody wants to give that a listen, there is a few interesting episodes there. So.
All right, so we're going to get started. The first thing I want to know is, what does health mean to you?
So, the first thing that came to mind when I was like thinking about this question was, well-roundedness. That's the main word that came to my mind. And it's basically, kind of something that I preach to a lot of people, which is, not falling into like latest diet trends and, just being overall prioritizing like your mind and your body, whatever, like, as far as like diet goes, like I'm a huge advocate for just eating well and not, like, I do this diet or this diet unless it's for a specific reason. And some of the other things I thought about was like giving yourself grace when it comes to dieting and mental health, because, I say to prioritize those things, but that means you can get into these situations where if you fall off of that, you feel so bad about it that it might keep you from getting back into it. Yeah. Because, we can be so hard on ourselves sometimes. So giving yourself grace if you fall out of like, I had 2 days in a row where I ate cookies. It's like, okay, that's fine. Just, you have to get back into it. Everything's in moderation, that type of thing. Breathing came up as well when I was thinking about it. Just like, I don't think, as humans, we're not always aware of like our breath and how we can become so tense in situations that we start holding our breath. So always focusing on your breathing and how is my breathing right now? Is it shaky? Is it like, like thinking about that. And then doing things you love, like, just finding something that you love to do and sticking with that thing because it makes you happy.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that, especially with the like diet. Like, no diet works for everyone, which is why there are so many diets out there in the first place. Like, everybody's different. It worked for somebody for a reason. Doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody.
Yes.
And the same with like the whole like overall, or like some people call it like whole person or like holistic health. Like, your health is more than just what you eat, you exercising, like doing things you love, or like you said, breath work, like whether it's intentional or not, like being conscious about how you're breathing, or if you're taking time to actually control your breathing is extremely important. But yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a lot of times what we get into is just like how we eat, what diet are we on, and then we get upset when the diet doesn't work, and you think it's our fault. We think it's our own fault that the diet didn't work. When it's just the diet wasn't meant for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then does wellness mean the same thing to you as health, or is that like something different for you?
So I thought about that when I got to that question. I was kind of thinking, like, is health and wellness do they fall in the same category?
Yeah.
But I actually came up with the idea of like wellness more so meaning long term. So just creating healthy habits that are beneficial to you as a person is more, I think, what wellness really means to me. And potentially that means unlearning some habits that were passed down by generations that especially in our community, like I think we have a lot of the unintentional habits that have been passed down, and people just take those to heart, and it's like, that's culture. And I get that, but it's creating your own healthy habits. And to promote your long-term wellness.
I think a lot of times, especially like I feel like with like Black and brown communities, our everything with us kind of tied up into our culture. And
Yes.
so, like,
Yeah, yep.
It's like-
Especially food.
yes,
My goodness.
food. And so, like, which I think is great. I think that even like the foods we eat as a community are good for a lot of times, maybe just a time and a place. Like,
Right,
that's probably
exactly.
not food we should be eating every day or like
Yes.
constantly.
Yes.
But it's also something that I've been learning. Like sometimes like certain foods, if it's outside of your diet, is like good because of the community aspect of it.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
That's
like
true.
being around people while you're eating those foods is good for you.
That's true.
yeah,
That's
like-
true. It's more good for like creating those good mental moments and bonding.
So and almost like the food's almost healthier for you because it's like a good mental space for you.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah. But yeah, and I think that oftentimes I think that in our speaking of like health and wellness, like we only think of health as health, like the foods we eat are like our body image. Often,
Right.
because oftentimes for a lot of us, our body images are seen so negatively in the community, like mainstream, like we're a lot of times we're considered overweight or like, and so we're so focused on like a diet
Yep.
to fit an image than like just
Yes.
being healthy. Like
Yes.
And
yes.
feeling
I think
good.
we're
Yeah.
often hyper focused on our image.
Image, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess that's a community thing. I never even thought about it that way, but yes, I think it is largely a community thing and how we're portrayed. And so we're always hyper focused on like,
Yeah.
how do I look right now?
Yeah.
And
Am
it's
I, like-
yeah, but how do you feel?
Yeah,
You know?
I think it's also part of it is also like this in some weird way, like a code switching thing. Like my image, do I fit into the space that I'm going into? Like,
True.
don't want to stand out too much. Like,
That's true.
Are they
That
going
is
to
true.
deem what I'm wearing or how I look work appropriate?
Right.
Like-
regardless of whether you can control that or not,
Right?
because that's just your body type.
Right? Body type, your hair, like, is it appropriate for work? Like,
Right.
and I feel like that's a lot of it for us. It's like trying to not are even so like not to be perceived as like being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like you want to fit in so you don't like stand out too much.
Yes. Yeah.
So some of the
sure.
things that you're not supposed to be there. And so then how do you show up for yourself in like the health and wellness space? Like there's something you do daily or
So usually I like to just check in with my mind and body daily. So it's like I try to, when I get off of work, like where have I been holding tension? Have I been breathing appropriately? Do I need to take a 2-minute just breathing exercise? And have I let my emotions get the best of me at work today? If I did, you know, what happened? How could I have handled it differently? So I just really like to do check-ins. Sometimes, you know, that includes journaling as well, things I've learned in therapy. But really, it's just, I just like to do these little small check-ins, and they don't take much time. It's just, I just get off of work. I might like grab a glass of water or something and just sit on the couch. And just like, okay, let me breathe, think about where I've been holding tension and how did today go? How could it have gone better? And I try to do that daily. I'm not saying that I'm perfect and I actually get it done daily. Nobody's perfect, but you know, I try to make sure that I get that done.
Yeah. I think I'm the same way, except for me, I'm a little more intentional about like a morning routine, kind of, whether it is journaling or reading or listening to something, like just giving myself like a cup of tea and giving myself like 10-15 minutes to just like mentally prepare for work or what I have to do for the day. Like, and I realize that when I don't do that, my day looks drastically different. I'm stressed out at work.
Yep.
Don't want to talk to anybody. Like,
Right.
is there anything that you and your husband do together that's like for like health and wellness, or do you guys kind of keep that separately for you guys?
So a lot of that is individual. But I mean, we're kind of different in that, you know, maybe we're not different. We're just, I believe in individuality, like even within being married. So a lot of that we do individually, but one thing that I do like to do, if it be on a weekend or like if we're both home during the week for whatever reason, we love to take walks together. And like we have dogs, so it helps. But like, I'm always like, hey, let's just go for a walk. And, you know, we get some sun on our skin and, you know, just kind of get outside, get some, well, I say fresh air, but good God, it's Texas and like in the spring. So like the allergies
I live in California. It's worse.
Right. Yeah. The pollen out here is insane, but we do still try to get outside and get some fresh air. And, so that's one ritual that we do have is like once a week we take a walk together and we take a walk with the dogs. So something else, I mean, that's really the main thing that we do is that. And every now and then I'll try to convince him to do yoga. So sometimes it works.
I don't see him doing yoga at all.
Oh, yeah, I know. A lot of people don't because he's such a large man. But like he got pretty good at it for a while there.
I can see him like awkwardly trying to do
it. Oh, yeah. No, it's quite a scene. I think that's why he hasn't never done it in front of anyone else.
Especially with his like personality. Like I don't see it working out very well.
Yeah. So he's goofy the whole time, or he's like making these ridiculous noises as he's in a pose. He's just like, oh. I'm like, you okay over there? He's like, I'm trying to breathe. It's great. It's great. Yeah. It's at least entertaining for me.
I do like, and I think it's important that you mentioned that you guys kind of keep your like health and wellness things like individual, like, because you guys, I cannot like again, like no one's the same, and like even you're decompressing or like that can look drastically different.
Right.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes when it is drastically different like that, and two people try to kind of do them at the same time, it's like more stress than helpful. Yes. Yeah. You're like, this
it can be clashing.
Yeah. Like, this didn't call me at all.
Exactly. Like, because they, you know, somebody else might try to push their way of decompressing onto you, and it's like, hey, why don't you just try doing this thing? And you're like, well, now I feel worse. Thank you. Right. And then now you're like fighting at the person that you didn't even mean to fight at. So
yeah, like now you guys are upset at each other and more stressed out.
Right.
And then this next question is, why do you think health and wellness is important to talk about, like, in our communities?
So, specifically, I mean, for the Black community, health and wellness were never a priority. And I mean, we're getting better, but I think it still isn't. And so we treat health and wellness a lot as if it's a luxury. And so I think that's why it's important to be having these conversations and talking about trying to pass these things down in younger generations so that we can kind of get rid of some of these diseases that are like 100% preventable just by like diet and like, you know, checking in and being actually healthy and well. Things like diabetes and high blood pressure, things that run through my family that I'm like, I have to be aware of this now and like, you know, think twice about what I eat. So really, I just think that that's a huge thing is like, we need to start prioritizing these things.
Yeah. You saying that reminds me of, and I'm sure you probably follow them as well, like the nap ministry.
Oh,
on Instagram.
I haven't even no. What's that?
Yeah, they it's like it's nap. So they like prioritize like rest, like, but they call it the nap ministry on Instagram, and like.
Yes.
That's literally all they promote. And it's like, and I think it's for the Black like community, like prioritizing rest, saying no, like let you kind of know, like, it's okay to like, to not do all of these things.
Yes. I think we way too often pile too much on our plates and we're just like, no, I'm just going to keep going. Yeah. And you know me, I love a good nap. So
you and I both. And I think that's also like, again, also kind of like a cultural thing. Like we've always kind of just been like, keep going, and like not processing anything. Like, especially why like mental wellness is so taboo, like in our culture, like because no one in the past has sat down to talk about it. Like you're just taught to keep going. Like don't deal with anything. Just keep at it.
Keep pushing. Yep.
Also, like you were talking about like high blood pressure and like diabetes. I don't know if you've ever heard of this book that I've read in the past. I'm kind of rereading it again. Just came out like a year ago. It's called like Black Fatigue, and how like racism has like the title's like Black Fatigue, how racism erodes like the black's mind, body, and spirit. And it was talking about how a lot of the times, like the diseases and stuff is not just like, the foods that we eat, but like our body's response to chronic stress.
Yes.
Because racism puts like a chronic stress on our bodies.
Yeah.
On top of it being like a generational thing. Like, so there's like this generational trauma that we all carry in us on top of what we already deal with daily. And that's why we get a lot of the, like our body responding to constant stress and not being able to kind of de-stress from like the racism in the world.
Right.
Which is important. Like, I think a lot of times we think, it's just diet, but you have to think like kind of how we think, like it's a whole body, like everything's kind of connected, like the stress affects
the environmental factors
of like too. And so I was reading, I was like, that's really interesting to think about. Like, yes, people talk about like generational trauma, but like, and people talk about how we may be dealing with it like mentally, but how's your body dealing with it physically? Like,
didn't even think about that.
Like you have this we have this constant stress on our bodies, and people talk about like how when trauma, like even like other people, like generational trauma, like is in your, like becomes kind of part of your genetics. Like you kind of carry that trauma like genetically with you. Yeah. And so like, I was like, that's interesting. Like, it's not just about like, how am I handling my stress now? Like, how are we as a culture, like decompressing from like these generations of not being able to decompress and like deal with our like mental and physical, emotional, like well-being. And to me, I think that's why sometimes it's like very important, like for our community to talk about these things, like in like a safe space, kind of like this, like a podcast or listening to something, or even being able to talk to someone like about it, because we hold it all in.
Right, exactly. And we've been doing so for long. Yeah, I agree. That's a really interesting aspect. So
I didn't even think about. I was like reading it and I was like, what? Like it makes sense, but like I never connected it. Like
exactly.
Or even like people talk about like in the terms of PTSD, like Black people have like post-traumatic like slave disorder, and like that carries with us. Like those were kind of all the questions. Was there anything that's been coming to mind during these conversations for you, or anything else you'd like to share?
No, not really. I think, we've hit all of the main points of like what I've thought about. I mean, I talk about, like I said, one of my bigger things that I would like to push is like, nobody's going to be perfect at this. Like, we're still learning.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we're just now starting to have these conversations. So it's like, I don't want anyone to feel like, well, I'm not there, so like I can never get there. It's like, I wasn't here either.
Talk to us a year ago. Totally
right. Had to learn these behaviors. So it takes time, but you have to also be willing to take the time and do these things and want to prioritize your health.
Yeah, definitely. And that's even out of this crazy pandemic, I think that's one of the good things that's kind of come out of it, is like a lot of people have taken time to take care of themselves because they had nothing else to do but to take care of themselves. All we had was time to like self-reflect, process, like literally could do nothing else but but do inner work like for like a year being stuck in the house. Yes. Well, I want to thank you again, Klia, for joining me, being my first guest.
Absolutely.
Yes. And that is all. So thank you for joining us for the Wellness Tea podcast, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Stop.